And the season finale of Studio Inter will be discussing the Europa League final. We'll be looking at Conte Gate. Will he stay? Will he go? We'll be looking at the player of the season, our favorite moment of the season, this week's Moratti, Moggi, and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter on SempreInter.com.
Per De Vrij, c'è la torre per Messina, l'ha presa! L'ha ripresa Messina! L'ha ripresa Messina! Il toro! Il toro! Il toro! Il tiro! Samir! Bogdanovic! La recupera Brozovic, andiamo in contropiede, la porta è vuota, tira, attenzione, e gol!
Benvenuti, bentornati to the final episode of Studio Inter of the never-ending 2019-2020 season. I'm your host, Nima Tavallaey, wishing you welcome to a pod that I wish would have been much more exciting and bubbly, but because of what happened on Friday night, for natural reasons, we're not as happy. But despite all of that, despite the loss, it has been a very good season for Inter. Despite all the chaos that has been and is going on, actually. But before we get to all of that, I'd like to introduce my panelists, starting with SempreInter.com preview writer, Mr. Mohamed Nassar, Mystic Mo, Mr. Positivity. I'm suspecting, do you feel very mystic and do you feel very positive?
I don't feel very mystic, but I'm still quite positive. It's been, like you said, a great season, so can't wait to get into the conversation.
Awesome. Brilliant. That's the way we want it. And we're also joined by our very good friend from London, Mr. William Beckman, or Billiam, as he revealed on a podcast that he was called.
Hello. 352 days, 33 episodes, and about 6 correct predictions later, excluding Mystic Mo, we're bringing down the curtain on our season as well. So looking forward to saluting it in style.
Indeed. And we are also joined by our good friend over in Canada, producer over at TSN, and a referee who actually, as opposed to most people online, knows the rules and knows what he's talking about, which I absolutely love, and that's why I always tag him on all these issues. Welcome back, Mr. Michael Gallo.
Hello, everybody. 20,000 kilometers later of driving across my country, I'm back in Southern Ontario, the province of Canada. Ready to talk about the Europa League final.
I am so jealous of you. Your holiday has been like, oh my God, the nature, the scenes, the stuff that you've been. I mean, it's like a dream holiday. That's my dream holiday, what you've done.
I'm not happy to be back, that's for sure.
Well, I understand why. I mean, some of those pictures you took, I mean, there weren't any filter. They were gorgeous, the scenery. Jesus, it's unbelievable. And we're also joined by our very good friend, one of the few sane people in Florida, if you ask him yourself. He he's a studio host on Inter Miami CF. He's a Calcio Connection podcast host on the podcast 5 Reasons Sport, Kane's Football Pregame, voted Miami New Times Best AM Radio Show on 560 WQAM, Mr. Alex Donno.
Hey, Nima. Hey, everyone. Yesterday we took a very long family drive up to a drive-through zoo, and the entire time my 2-year-old son was cranky, miserable, and complaining. Reminded me a lot of Antonio Conte, I'm not going to
lie. Brilliant. Well, I mean, we'll get to all that because there is a lot of talking about, because he definitely, once again, decided to create some controversy. But although I got to say this was expected from me, but we'll get to all that. But before we do, let's talk about the Europa League. And there were a couple of things I want to talk about with you, Mike, because obviously this is your expertise. You know this really well because of the refereeing aspect of it. And I wanted to talk to you about the contentious decisions regarding the first, I think it's like fourth ending of the game, when Lukaku wins a penalty, but it's not a red card. Now, obviously, the rule changed that there shouldn't be, you don't give a red card and a penalty if it's a goal-scoring opportunity or something like that. But then you explained clearly that, no, it depends on the situation. So I want you to explain exactly what the rule change has been, and explain also the situation, why it should have been a red card, according to you.
Well, look, there's a lot of different situations I want to explain on this entire scenario. Number one, let me just explain something. I refereed for 15 years, professionally in the later stages of my refereeing career. I had just stopped a couple of years ago, but I had the benefit of being instructed by FIFA referees and FIFA instructors over the last, between 2012 and 2015. And I made sure that before I discussed this on this podcast, that I spoke with some of these instructors about this specific situation. Now, I'm not going to reveal who they are because it's not what I'm supposed to do, but I want to explain to everyone what the situation is here. Number one, so we have Lukaku being fouled from behind. I believe it was the goal scorer. I'm forgetting his name right now, but he was taken down. A clear penalty, no doubt about that. But the rule change from 3-4 years ago was that if the referee deems this as a goal scoring opportunity, what it used to be, what obvious goal scoring opportunity, what it used to be is automatic red card penalty. But they got rid of that for certain situations. So the first thing we need to look at is this a obvious goal scoring opportunity? This is up for debate. The FIFA referee that I spoke to, he was pretty adamant that it wasn't, and he was agreeing with the call on the field, and he believed that the referee did not deem it as an obvious goal scoring opportunity. That's more of an opinion thing, and I totally get it. No problem with that. So that's kind of why the referee didn't give the red card on that. However, let me explain that they changed the rule, this triple punishment rule that requires a red card. Before it used to require a red card, and depending on certain fouls. So the fouls that will also include a red card, they will be certain ones where a defender is not trying to make a play on the ball, which in this situation, the defender was making a play on the ball. So even if it was an obvious goal scoring opportunity, it would have not been a red card based on the defender was making a play on the ball. However, if the defender was doing something like pulling the jersey, deliberately pushing a serious foul play, like so getting punched, anything violent conduct, or a deliberate handball to deny a goal scoring opportunity, then that would have been grounds for a red card. So that's why I had the conversation with the FIFA referee, who obviously these rules have been changed since I just stopped refereeing. So I wanted to make sure that I was adamant about this and make sure I was 100% correct. So in light of these, talking to and having these conversations, I believe the referee's decision to not send off the defender was correct. If that makes sense to all of you.
Yeah, it sure does. I get what you mean. Okay, the second part was the second contentious decision is the handball situation that, I mean, in both of these issues, we'll get to that in terms of what VAR's role in that, and if there was a silent check, and how that works. But I first want to get your thoughts on the handball rule of whose name eludes me, the central defender who scored the winning goal, of course. I mean, why do you think that was a penalty, or why don't you think that was a penalty? And I mean, based on the new rules of, just lay out the text on that. Explain a little bit about that.
Okay, so looking at handball, we've always got 4 different types of criteria to look at. And these 4 types of criteria, which 3 of them were not met, by the way, on this handball. So the reaction time for the defender to get his or her handball out of the way, the defender did not have any time to react to move his hand. It was really quick. Did the defender make himself bigger? No, he did not. He kept his hand down, and his hand was always in a natural position. The ball moved towards the hand, and the hand did not move towards the ball. His hand stood still. So those 3 parts of the criteria would keep it as a non-handball. However, something very important to keep in mind here is if this ball does not hit the defender's hand, this ball goes right to Lukaku, and he is in a great position to score. Okay, in a very good position to score. Almost, but it was not obviously denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. It's not there. But if the ball does not hit his hand, Lukaku is right there, and I mean, we know once Lukaku gets that ball in that position, there's a very good chance he's going to score there. But we cannot make that assumption of what was going to happen once he got that ball. Okay. Looking at this video, it's a very, very tough one to see, and I understand both sides of it. But we've seen this being called in Serie A how many times this year? This exact situation, I'd say dozens of times, where a player, even he wasn't moving his hand and it was just in a natural position, the referee would still call it. So we've got Italian referees who are applying laws differently than other referees in UEFA competition. So obviously the consistency is always going to be an issue. We've always had this issue with consistency around these leagues because UEFA referees are calling different things different than Serie A and EPL and whatever. So barring that, having that said, I think that it's very likely that this should have been a penalty based on the advantage that was gained by hitting his hand. And that's the one thing that these instructors and referees have been adamant about is gaining an advantage. Are you gaining an advantage of the ball hitting your hand? And that's exactly what happened here. So,
but what about the part of proximity? Because I don't think you can. I mean, when they talked about proximity, they were talking about ricochet, right? Like if a ball ricochets off someone into the arm, then they say that's this was not that, because there are angles saying that he's making that there is an angle I've seen of the game of that situation where it looks like he's making his body unnaturally bigger because the arm is like there's daylight between his arm and his body and the ball.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some space. I mean, I don't see how he's supposed to keep his hand in a natural position other than what it was like. I don't see it that his hand was in an unnatural position. I mean, his hand is in an unnatural position if it's up, if it's middle, if it's anywhere close to where it is along his side. I believe his hand was in a natural position, in a fine position. I just think that they get an advantage of the ball hitting his hand, and that was the problem for me.
Okay, cool. And as for VAR, in both of those situations, the VAR, does the VAR, like, how does it work? I mean, from what I've understand from Luca Marelli is that the VAR communicates with the referee and says, did you see the situation? And then he says yes or no. And if he says yes, then they have to wait, and then they have to make a call whether or not to see if this qualifies as a big enough mistake, or the terminology eludes me now, isn't it? Like a clear and obvious error. If it falls between that. And in this situation, they feel they don't. And that's why I don't understand. Why is this not a clear and obvious error?
Yeah, that's the gray area of what you're going into. If this is called, like, again, if this is called a handball on the field, I don't think they change it. If it's a non-handball, which is what the referee called at the time, I don't think they would go in that route anyway. So it's a very tight window. However, if you look at the referee on this specific play, okay, he was in decent position to look at it. He saw it happen. He saw it right in front of him. Okay, and then and everyone started complaining right to him. And then he pointed to his ear and said, you can pretty much make out what he's saying. It looks like he's saying, they told me we're good, it's fine. Like they checked it, we're okay, it's fine. They didn't tell me anything was different. So that's what I got from it, is that he decided it wasn't, and VAR gave that quick silent check. They looked at it really quickly. I mean, this was within like 20 seconds, by the way. But VAR has the opportunity to look to replay something within seconds if they want. And they've got all the different angles. They've got all the replays before we get to see them. And to me, it looks like the referee was pointing to his ear and his thing, and he was saying, this is fine. They've checked it. VAR says it's good, and we're good, and we're going to move on. And that's what I learned from watching that over and over again. There's not much else I can really take from it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad. I wanted to get that out of the way because I just, it's been quite a point of contention. But let's talk about the game, because I don't think that was the main reason why Inter lost. I found the whole situation, Inter were very unbalanced from start to finish. I mean, I've praised, and we've all praised on this podcast the past few weeks how well Antonio Conte has prepared these other games against Getafe, Bayer Leverkusen, Shakhtar, preparing the team mentally, tactically, and also in the approach and formation. He got all of that wrong, and in my opinion, the first half Inter were kind of lucky to be drawing, because Sevilla were overloading and overrunning Inter's midfield. And then, as always, he kind of fell back into his old sins of being reactive instead of proactive, and then he makes 3 changes after Sevilla scores 3-2, and the game is virtually over. I'm keen to hear how you saw this game, Mo. Do you agree with that assessment, or how do you feel?
Yeah, no, I think that it definitely leaves us bitter, the result, but I think it was clear that Sevilla outplayed Inter at every particular aspect of the game, whether it's Lopetegui versus Conte, whether it's man on man on the field, or how they managed the match as a full 90 minutes. I think you're right. It's very difficult. Hindsight's 2020, so it's very difficult to say. To judge his initial selection, because this is the starting 11 that had done so well in the last 3 rounds. So you can't really fault Conte for going with that selection very much. We can only speak about hypotheticals. Should he have played Eriksen instead of Gagliardini or whatever? But it's all neither here or there. I agree with you that the substitutions, of course, were reactive. But I also read it differently. I think I see 2 confounding factors here. The first is I really think he had seen Lopetegui play his cards out. I think he realized that, as we had seen, Sevilla's players could not maintain that high press that they had all through the 90 minutes of the game, and they were beginning to tire out around the 65th minute, right before Lukaku scored the own goal. So I think he had wanted Lopetegui to be forced to make his changes, and then he goes in and makes his changes instead. And of course, the goal happens, and the rest is history. There's also the other factor, which is this is a potential 120-minute game. So how much do you want to be proactive and switch and when? So I agree that Conte did not do himself justice. This was not his best moment at all, and a lot of the management of the game was poor on his part, and the decisions were poor. But I also get it. I understand what happened and why it happened and when. But you win some, you lose some, and this is the way the game goes.
For sure, yeah. That's of course that's life, isn't it? Will, how did you experience this game? I mean, did you feel that Inter were ever going to win this, or did you experience it a little bit like me and Mo did, in the fact that Sevilla felt in control from the beginning?
I am very much singing from the same hymn sheet as you. I thought the best team won, and I don't think that there's too much of an argument to suggest anything otherwise. It has to be said that it was a very scrappy game, really, from the beginning to the end. Neither team really created a bucket load of chances, but even without creating a lot, I felt like Sevilla were the more composed team throughout, and they were the team that kind of managed the match better from a tactical and also maybe an emotional point of view from the start to the finish. We knew coming into this match that they were a team that, or a club, it should be said, because obviously they've changed a lot of players over the years, but this is a club that is very used to playing these matches and going deep into European competition. And they showed it in this game, because I felt in terms of concentration, in terms of moving the ball well, in terms of maybe managing the moments of the match, they were on a different level to Inter, not in a sense that they were dominant, but just in all the little things that add up to being the better team. So I agree with you that the red card at the start could have been a red card, even though Michael explained very well why it probably wasn't. There could have been a penalty for handball, but ultimately they were both in the first 20 minutes of the match. I don't think you can really start having a go at the referee. If you're going to have a go at the referee for anything, then maybe the way he managed the yellow cards. But I mean, these are secondary arguments. I don't think there's any kind of alibi in the referee for this defeat. Inter were second best. They, in terms of maybe the individuals, there's not a lot to choose between the two teams, but in terms of collective experience, Sevilla looked like a more polished outfit. It was interesting. I noticed at the start of the game when Inter took the lead, there was a lot of tension and anger from the Inter players towards the referee. They were getting really wound up in the first 10, 15 minutes when the game had started well, and it seemed, like they were a little bit too tense and a bit nervous. And I can understand that, because a lot of these players do not have experience of these matches. Apart from maybe Godin and Lukaku, who, funnily enough, were the two players that scored the goals. There are a lot of players that didn't play their best, and there are technical reasons for that. You said Conte didn't necessarily give Inter enough protection in wide areas. There were a lot of times when Jesus Navas on the right and Region on the left were getting a bit too much space to cross in, and there wasn't enough support from the midfield. There was a sense that Inter's midfield was non-existent. Maybe we can get onto that afterwards. But just it never really felt like Inter were controlling the game in the way they controlled the previous games. I think a lot of that is down to the fact that, as we said in the previous pod, Sevilla were the toughest team that Inter faced in this Europa League. So obviously the challenge was always going to be harder than it was in previous matches. But I felt like I was watching a team that wasn't comfortable in a match of that magnitude. And you can see that from, the way that they lost their heads for the two set pieces. Inter, how many times this season Inter conceded twice from a set piece? Not very many, I don't think. I can't remember any off the top of my head. Maybe the Sassuolo game now. I don't remember. There were a lot of small differences that ended up contributing to this result. So I don't have any complaints. I agree that Conte waited too long. I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that he went with the same team, because as Mo said, this is the team that's got him this far. So he went with what he knew. But I would definitely have brought on Eriksen a lot earlier. I think if Eriksen had had that chance on the edge of the box, which Gagliardini had, he would have lifted the ball and he may have found the goal. That's an annoying thing to look back on. So yeah, nobody was. I don't think there's an individual that was sort of culpable for this defeat, but I can't complain, and I just hope that this match serves as the kind of growing pain that you need for future finals, because you can only learn on the job, and this team hasn't played a final for 9 years. So I have a few complaints about the results, despite the fact the winning goal was a bit of a fluke, and hopefully it will come again next year.
For sure. I mean,
go for it. Wills, yeah. I agree completely with everything you say. I feel like the word that had escaped me when I was doing my bit earlier is cynicism. I feel like Sevilla were seasoned, mature, and they managed the game with the right amount of cynicism. I'm not complaining about their time wasting in the last 10-15 minutes, but they did waste a lot of time very cleverly, and it just the match just fizzled out. It didn't end up with a pop or a bang. They were very mature and really the right level of cynicism in managing these 90 minutes.
They managed it perfectly, didn't they, those last 10 minutes? After Inter made their subs, there was nothing really. There was the chance that was cleared off the line, but other than that, it was as if it was a pre-season friendly, because Inter didn't have any sort of momentum at all, because they weren't allowed to do it. And you can't blame Sevilla's players for that, because if we'd been in front, how many times have we had to go at this team for not managing matches properly this season? You need to do that. It's the refs' job to stamp it out. So they did what they had to do.
For sure. Alex, when you were watching this, did you feel that Inter were going to win it, or did you feel that Sevilla were, that they were in control, just like the three of us have already said? And also, what do you think about the Lukaku own goal? Yes, technically, I guess it's an own goal, but I can't really blame him. I understand that he's upset because that's how he is. He's got a winning mentality. He can't stand losing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been at this level that he is. But what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I'll start with that. I think it's a bit laughable that I see so many people trying to blame him for that. I think ridiculous. That probably a lot of that stems from the typical banter you get from, Man United fans and the Icardi FC Interisti who still try and tear this guy down for anything. But no, I agree with you, Nima. I think it's very, very harsh to put blame on Lukaku for that. As far as my level of optimism, certainly I had no expectation pre-match, none. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I don't watch Sevilla probably as much as I should, but I also know that if anyone's going to feel comfortable in a Europa League final, it's Sevilla. It's been their competition in recent years. Unfortunately, we saw really Inter's mentality, I think, regress. It wasn't the same Inter that we saw for the previous few matches in Europa League. And credit to Sevilla, because as you guys all mentioned, it's the toughest opponent that Inter has faced in that competition this season. And so you saw the level raised up a little bit there. I think the only time I felt decent was, when Inter did take that 1-0 lead after really the first threatening attack that they had in the game, and Lukaku converts the penalty. And I thought, okay, maybe this can be really a start of positive momentum. But that was fleeting, because Sevilla would equalize. They would take the 2-1 lead before Godin got one back. It didn't feel very good at halftime, of course, because Inter was really outplayed in that first half. Early on in the second half, we saw a better version of Inter, but then the Sevilla goal happened, and like you guys said, they really killed off the match very well. Aside from potential refereeing errors, I really wish Lukaku had converted and scored on that 1v1 that he had with the keeper, and maybe the conversation would have changed a little bit, but it was the deserved result, and I certainly wasn't happy about the officiating. I don't think any Interista should be happy with that, but I can't blame it on the officiating, because this is not like you come away from this game saying that, that the side who played better was robbed of the result, because I do think that Sevilla, for everything that they could control, refereeing decisions aside, were the better, more composed side in that game. And yeah, I get very frustrated when I see Conte wait as long as he does, 75 plus minutes, to use his substitutions. I'm sure we'll get more into that, but no, I think that coming off of that match, I obviously heartbroken and frustrated to lose in a final. But I think, to be honest, I was a little bit more stressed out about the uncertainty with Conte's future and the project, with the post-match comments. I was actually more stressed about all of that stuff than I was with the result itself.
Well, let's talk about that, because I have been saying this on this podcast, and I said it's after the Atalanta game, that I think he's going to resign, and I think he's going, because and that's going to be a mutual termination. And the reason for that is, it's like Will so brilliantly said, the podcast we did after that, immediately after the Atalanta game, this wasn't just one of the spur of the moment things, and it wasn't after a defeat. Antonio Conte had something on his mind that he had rehearsed, that he wanted to say, and this has been bothering him for a very long time. And the way that he said it, he knew what he was doing. And the fact that they all kind of walked it back for the sake of the Europa League is because it was ripping Inter apart. Inter were under absurd amount of pressure after this. And then when Repubblica kind of did that idiotic story about him wanting to return, contacting Juve players and Juve managers and saying, are you really going to sack Sarri? I want to come back. Then he found the perfect moment to go out and take a strong stance and say he's going to sue them and unite Inter. But the problems and the fracture was already there. And what he said, this time I didn't see this as a ranting. What he said after the Sevilla game was not ranting. It was not an emotional outburst. It was a very calm, cool, collected statement by someone who has clearly had enough of a lot of things. He didn't want to come out and say what it was, but the fact that he speaks about his family, to me, is a big issue here. When he says I have to choose between football and my family, of course he's going to choose his family. Now, what is it about? We all remember in November there was this report about a death threat being sent to Appiano Gentile, with a bullet and a letter sent to Appiano Gentile with threatening Conte, and he obviously knew about it, and he didn't want his family to know, which I think any human being, any single one of us, everyone in that position would want to protect their family. And so they wanted to put the lid on. They reported it to the police, but they didn't, they put the lid on it. And obviously this was leaked because, and then when this was leaked, his wife went out on Facebook and said, how can they be allowed to publish any old crap? This isn't true. Only it turned out to be true, which puts him in big trouble at home. So, and he feels completely unprotected by the club in that situation. And again, I don't think anyone can argue with him there. Like, it's just, you just got to lift your hands up and say, you're right. He's absolutely right on this issue. But so that's one part of it. Then you have another part of it where when he talks about not feeling protected in how Inter is treated, and the way that his work and his squad hasn't been protected by the club. Well, Antonio, this isn't Juve. This is Inter. Inter aren't protected in the media the same way Juventus are, and you should have kind of known that, and you can't be oblivious to that fact. But I mean, here we are now, and I feel that I honestly feel that the fact that he's demanded and gotten it, that he's demanded a private meeting with Steven Zhang, only the two of them, um, and they want to talk things out is rather remarkable for many reasons. Number one, it's pretty remarkable they've not been able to do that so far. The fact that Conte feels that he has a very good relationship with Steven, but he feels that the others are distorting what he's saying. That's what I read into it. The other directors and other people working around the club that are there, and they kind of translate what he says to fit their own agenda, which is pretty much what's being reported right now. That's really worrisome, and I think that could, unless Steven Zhang, this is a big test for him, because now he has to show, he has to come out of this as the great unifier, as the great leader of this club, and he's very young, and so far he's been brilliant in what he does. It's very difficult to try to predict what happens from here, but it is a very remarkable situation, and it shows to me that the communication internally at Inter maybe not is at its best, or as good as it should be. I still think that I hope that he stays, because I think it would be absolute suicide for him to leave. It would set Inter back years. It would again Inter would risk throwing away a winnable Scudetto before even the season starts, which has got to be some sort of new Inter record. So even with Allegri, if Allegri were to come, so this whole situation is not ideal. And I want to start with you, Alex. What is your take on all this?
I've had a lot of time, of course, since Friday evening to think about it, and I'm really of two minds on this. Of course, a big part of me wants Conte to stay. I want some sort of a magical peace and understanding to come out of this meeting that he's going to have with Steven Zhang, and, to get, committed Conte for another season, maybe another 2 seasons to serve out the entire contract that he signs. But another part of me thinks that what I just said is a little bit too optimistic and kumbaya-like, that And Nima, you said it so well. Everything about the threat, the bullet, the family stuff. Of course, I respect it and I understand it. Being a family man myself, I can see Conte's perspective on it, and it's horrifying that story would leak out. If the bitterness has festered for this long. And, how many times have we seen Conte creating drama, melting down, and then he brings these family issues back? Like, it's starting to sound to me, and of course, I take Conte's side on the bullet thing, I do, but with all of this just animosity that he's been holding on to for this long, I'm starting to feel like a divorce may actually be the right thing here, because my fear would be, Conte decides to stick it out for another season, and, the animosity is not completely gone. Maybe the primary driver for him would be, I don't want to forfeit all of the money that I'm owed on this contract, and I don't want to commit career suicide by resigning, because who knows where I bounce back to immediately. I don't want him to stay for those reasons, okay? I don't want Conte to stay because he decides to stay in a marriage of convenience, because we've seen before with Conte that if he's not 100% committed to the team that he's managing, that you don't get the best version of Conte, that he's not someone who can make the best of a sour situation. Things have to be perfect from his perspective for him to function to the best of his abilities. So my opinion on this is ever evolving, because a couple of days ago I would have told you at all costs I want Conte to continue. Things have gone too far with this project, that they're signing Conte players. You saw the way that the side strengthened throughout the season, and despite losing in the final, overall you would consider the last 6 weeks or so of interseason to have been a very positive finish, and they're moving in a great direction with Conte. But I can't just help but be haunted by this idea that if he and Zhang come away, if they have their meeting, reportedly it's going to happen on Tuesday. Who knows? Maybe the final decision wouldn't come until Wednesday or Thursday. But if they do come out of this deciding to continue working together, are you really getting a Conte that's 100% on board? Because I think that meeting has to go incredibly well for Conte to come away from it saying, yeah, I'm 100% comfortable with the organizational structure of Inter for the next year plus. And I'm just not convinced you're going to get that sort of a home run coming out of that meeting.
Agreed. Mo, I sense Mystic Nima senses that Mystic Mo disagrees.
No, look, I think for once I disagree with your statement that we'd be throwing away a winnable Scudetto. I think we're very lucky. We're in a situation where someone like Allegri, who's had to come in and pick up the pieces after Conte, is available, and from all reports out there seems to indicate that he's interested in the project and continuing the project. So I don't think it's. I think for once Inter aren't between a rock and a hard place, but I also think like the passion, the drive, and the desire that Conte has shown me personally as an Inter fan over the last 12 whatever months is something that I've missed very much. The ambition and the desire to win, and like you guys have said, it's a winning project, and it's a project that's come a long way, and there's been a lot that's been learned since, especially particularly since the post-lockdown phase. So I'd just love to build on that. So for me, I'd love Conte to stay, and sorry, one more thing. I think, like you guys have also said, I think he's fighting for the right things. Of course, we'd like the club to be more protected in the media. Of course, we'd like for a structure not to have any leaks, and for the management team to feel protected, or the squad management team to feel protected by the corporate management, and for there not to be leaks. Of course, this is what we all want. So he's kind of fighting the good fight. So I stand by him in that, and I hope that it gets resolved in a manner that is, like Alex says, mutually beneficial for all parties. I think I'm not as pessimistic about the prospects of a resolution. I think that much has been made of Zhang's young age, but I remember when I was 27, 28, I was pretty mature and I could handle my stuff. It's not like we're talking about an 18-year-old kid.
Oh God, no! I didn't.
No, I know. No, I'm not talking about you personally. I'm saying like in general in the media. There's always been much that's been made of Zhang's young age, etc. But he seems all signs seem to indicate that the guy is quite smart, quite level-headed, and has managed a lot of those potential problems and listened to the right advice. My only worry at the moment is if there's a fracture between Marotta and Conte, because I think the architect of this recent success has been Marotta, and I would be very, very concerned if there is a genuine rift, or if Marotta decides to abandon the project should Zhang side with Conte too strongly. So this for me is the only real genuine point of concern. But otherwise, you know what? Conte is fighting for the club. He seems to, again, I go back to that him squirming when he sat that match out suspended, squirming in the tribuna when I think it was Moses missed the chance or missed the cross to Lukaku. So we know the guy's he's all in. So I think the players love him. He loves the players. The fans have clearly shown him a lot of affection. So it seems like that something good's going on, and I just hope that it all can be resolved that way. But if it doesn't, let's bring in Allegri, and I think it's still a winnable Scudetto.
Oh, we'll get to the Allegri part. I want to get Will and Mike's take on this as well. Starting with you, Will.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like a lose-lose situation. I know Mo said that we're not in between a rock and a hard place. To me, it feels like it at the moment. I agree with Alex in the sense that before the post-game interview on Friday evening, I was very much in the, do everything you can to keep him camp. But quite frankly, he doesn't look like someone who's 100% committed to continuing. He looks like a man, judging from his tone, that's already made his decision and is waiting for the formalities to be sorted out. And I mean, there's part of me that thinks that he's making these requests because he's Conte, he's never happy, he always wants more. But then there's also a nagging part of me in my head that thinks, is this one of those negotiations where someone is making blatantly unrealistic demands, fully aware that they won't be met in order to get a divorce? I don't know the answer to that, but whatever happens either way, I don't think Inter are going to give him what he wants, whether it's a massive mercato for the reasons that everyone knows, whether it's the revolution in terms of the managerial structure of the club, whether it's the communication. It's not going to happen. Suning are a very strong, they put a very strong structure in place, and they don't want the manager to be calling the shots every day of the week. So I don't think he's going to get the all-conquering role that he wants, if indeed he does want it in his heart of hearts. So that's why I think this meeting is very unlikely to produce a truce that's going to last for another season. And I completely agree with, I think it was Alex that said, if this goes on, what guarantee is there that this just doesn't happen again and worse next season? He's already had a go at the club in public after finishing second. What happens if we lose our first defeat next season? I'm just worried this is going to happen again. He's not someone that is known for his emotional stability. We've talked a lot about how, I saw a lot of talk on social media today about how Inter are going to change manager again, and this is a problem at the club. But you also need to consider a coach's history in different places. This is Inter's history, but it's also Conte's history. He did this at Juventus. He fell out with Chelsea after his first season. He was having a go at the Fiji while he was throughout his time in charge of Italy, and I see very little sample data so far to suggest that he would really rein in his instincts and get into line, unless he got absolutely everything he wants. And as I said, seems pretty likely to me, for whatever reason, be it COVID or Suning, not wanting to give all their power to a coach, that he's not going to get that. So with that in mind, despite all the problems that would be caused by changing in this summer of all summers, when you've got a short summer, the mercato is kind of squeezed, the season starts in less than a month, you're not going to have your first team squad available for training until after the international break, etc., etc. I think this is probably the lesser of two evils. Now, the interesting thing is going to be, how will this divorce take place if indeed it does? Because we've said that Conte could resign, but at the same time, he has a 2-year contract worth 12 million euros annually on the table. Where else are you going to find that in a post-COVID world? So I don't know if he's going to be willing just to let go of all of that. There's probably going to have to be an agreement, and let's just hope that if it is some kind of mutual termination, that they manage to find an agreement, and that it doesn't end up going sour like it did between him and Chelsea last year. I don't think, ultimately he is the perfect man to rebuild Inter, because Inter historically have done well with a sort of one-man show type coach, who's basically willing to give 150% to cover he's willing to give his contribution and then also make up for all the other sort of structural weaknesses that are around the club. If you think of all the managers that have succeeded at this club, they're always men who've been happy to act as a lightning rod. And I think from his comments over the last few weeks, despite him being ostensibly perfect for that role, he's made it pretty clear that he doesn't want to do that for another year. So, this isn't Inter pushing him out. If Conte doesn't want to stay and he doesn't want to have another year like he's had, then it's pretty difficult to change his mind. And it's a shame, because we're not ready to go on to it. I think a different sort of type of coach. Maybe we'll get on to Allegri in a bit, but if he wants to leave, we can't. There's nothing we can do, really. You can't just keep him there unless you're both 100% convinced. So it's a very difficult situation. But I think it looks like the ending is written, and we'll have to get on with it. Bit of a shame, but I think it's probably going to happen. And as you said, it has to be, the personal life has to be a factor as well, because in a sporting sense, it would be madness from Conte to leave this club right now, from his point of view, because he's not going to find a setup, I don't think, better than this anytime soon if it's a sporting decision. So despite everything I've said, I agree that the personal life must have something to do with it. And that's exactly the quote that I underlined as well from his interview on Friday. I thought that must be playing on his mind, because otherwise I can't rationally explain why you would walk away from this club and this project now.
Mike, whilst you were enjoying tranquility in the most beautiful natural setting ever, all of this was going down in Inter. What do you think? I mean, what is your take on it? I mean, I'm sure you followed it on the internet and stuff whenever you could, but what do you think is going to happen? What's your take on this?
Well, that's a lot to digest and to listen. I mean, yeah, I did follow it while I was gone, but like listening to Nima, listen to you go through that little timeline and storyline. There's a lot going on here, not just on the field, but like off the field too. And it's really mind-boggling how much there is to really take in and evaluate of what happens moving forward.
And remember that I forgot to mention, sorry, just to cut you, I remember to mention the fact that in the middle of all of this, you had also an email that was supposedly supposed to be sent to Steven Zhang, be sent to everyone at the club, and this email was also leaked in the media. Yeah, sorry, go on, Mike.
Well, look, I think everyone elaborated on it really well, so I'm not going to add too much to it, but what I want to say is Inter has not had a manager that has lasted 3 full seasons in a long time.
Mancini is the last one.
Mancini from 04 to 08 is where I can remember the last time we had a manager for 3 full seasons.
Yeah.
And
it's Mancini. It's definitely Mancini.
Yeah, but like his first stint, not his second stint, I think was only 2 seasons, right?
Yeah. The first time I was referring to the first time.
So that's a long time. That's over a decade ago, and we've probably gone through 10 to 13 managers in that span, and it's just like I want to have a team that has a manager for more than 2 years, because that's when a manager comes into a club and they start building things. It doesn't take 1 year, it doesn't take 2 years, it takes upwards of 3 or 4 years to get things done. So that's why I want him to stay. That's the reason why I don't want to have another manager come in and change this and change that and change that. Everything seems like it's on the field, at least, it's moving in the right direction. But when we move away from that, and then it's like we're starting all over again. And I don't like starting all over again. So at any point, I would want him to come back. But like you guys said, he needs to want to come back. And for whatever reason, whether it's personal or things aren't he's not getting everything he wants, but it looks like for the most part he has. It's his decision, and if he doesn't want to be here and he stays, I don't want that either. I'd rather have someone who wants to be here and not forced to stay here.
That's so true.
And that's what I'm really worried about, is if that after this meeting where he's kind of giving his reasons to Steven Zhang, and Zhang kind of convinces him to stay. Well, I hope it's because Conte believes in what he's saying and not just he's
going through the motions.
I'll stay. I don't want that to happen. I want him to stay, but I want him to stay because he believes in this team and he sees this team winning, potentially win the Scudetto next year. That's why I want him to stay.
For sure. I mean, if we're on the subject of Allegri, Mike, for me, there is no other choice. I think the very notion of Mauricio Pochettino it creates a form of rage and anger in me, because it's just, no, the guy has won nothing. The guy has never been in the Serie A. He doesn't know anything about the Serie A, and I do not want a non-winning coach who has never won a title in his life to come to Inter and the Serie A and for us to screw it up again and give Andrea Pirlo a kind of a roll out the red carpet for him to win the Serie A. Like, the very thought of that infuriates me. And also, the squad isn't built for Pochettino. It's really not, except for Christian Eriksen. It's really not built for Pochettino. Allegri is, for me, the only sane, rational, intelligent choice. And if Gianluca Di Marzio is anything to go by, which I think it is, he says he wants Inter above PSG, which I think is also pretty remarkable as well. That's a pretty strong statement that he made last night or Sunday night, as we're recording this on a Monday. For me, it's Allegri. Me and Mo have been talking about this on this pod before. I think, and we both think, he's one of the most underrated Italian coaches of the last decade. The man is tactically brilliant. Maybe not as good. He's not an ideologue and a visionary like Conte is, but he's a brilliant tactician, and he's a pragmatic coach. And I think the coach at Inter needs to be a pragmatic person, because Inter is a difficult environment to run and to be in. And I think you have to be the unifying force that at the club. You have to be the one that protects the club. You have to be the one that speaks out. You have to be the strong man of the club. And I think Allegri would be ideal in that situation. No doubt in my mind there. What do you think, Mike?
I mean, of the options that are available, then yes, I would agree with you that if Conte does leave, I believe he is the best out there that would be suited to make us, at least bridge ourselves the best way from Conte to the next step. I'm not disagreeing with that. I would want that. I'm still like in the back of my mind, I still would prefer to have Conte stay than have Allegri come in. That's what I'm still clinging on hope until we kind of figure this thing out. Once a decision is made on if Conte's staying, whether it's tomorrow or later this week, I would agree with you saying that Allegri would be the best option. I mean, he hasn't. What has he been doing the last year? I mean, I don't know. I mean, after he left Juve, has he ever been rumored to be with any other club? I don't.
No,
think
it's
so.
PSG. It's pretty much PSG. I mean,
yeah, PSG. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah. So
yeah, I think he's the best option that's available at this moment. That's what I'm agreeing with that perspective right there.
Will?
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt that if Inter are changing the manager, he's the only person they should be going for. He's won 5 of the last 6 Serie A titles. Moratti knows him very well. He won't try and call the shots in the way that Conte will. He's a bit of a company man in that sense. So he won't be on television screaming at the club for not buying him X or Y after every defeat or draw. And obviously he's available, which, given that this is a short summer, is not an insignificant detail. So I don't think there's any question that he's the right man. I think there's maybe a question about, in an ideal world, whether he's the right person for Inter at this particular point in their history. Because, in terms of building the team, I don't think we're quite at the phase where we have a strong enough squad to be perfect for a coach who's more of a sort of gestore than a man who drills his team and has a clear tactical identity. I still feel in an ideal world that's the better route for Inter to take, because we haven't got to that stage of our development yet. But clearly this is not an ideal situation. So that's probably a discussion that's that kind of is a waste of time at this particular moment in time, because we clearly aren't in an ideal situation. So yeah, I mean, Allegri is clearly the right decision. If I don't think, and in fact, there's been no attempt from any news source that I've seen to suggest that anyone else would be available. There was the only possible stumbling block would have been this interest in PSG. But as you said, Gianluca Di Marzio went on record a couple of days ago and said that if he's offered the Inter job and the PSG job, he picks Inter. I think that one reason that might be, because that might seem strange given that Allegri's always said that he wanted to coach abroad. But I think one thing that Allegri might be aware of is that he has a chance here to become the first coach in history to win the league with Juventus, Milan and Inter. And we know from Allegri's time at Juventus that he loves the history books. He's all about winning and all about what's left in after you've gone and what the records say. So I think that's probably a big pull for him. And I don't know, maybe there's a bit of him. I mean, he's not got the same sort of bitterness in his heart that I'm sure Conte did when he turned up a year ago. But he'd probably allow himself a wry smile if it could be him that denied Juventus a 10th consecutive league title, which I'm sure they'll be very keen to get this season. So yeah, we can get on to on pitch matters and how things will change. But in an overview, the grand scheme of things, there is absolutely no question that he's the right option if things were to go wrong in this meeting.
I think that what we'll see on the pitch is exactly what we saw at Juventus. I think he's going to start with a 3-4-1-2, and then slowly, gradually go to a 4-2-3-1, and a 4-3-3. That's where I am on this. What do you think, Mo? What do you expect to see from Mr. Die?
I expect to see Antonio Conte on the bench. No, look, yeah, it's. I don't want to project too far in the future. Let's see how things go. I really do hope, like Will said, I really do hope that we do. I agree with Will in the club's history, in form, in the sense of like the grand scheme of things, how we're the metamorphosis that is Inter. We're growing from something to something, and we still need a year or two of Conte. But then again, who guarantees that in 2 years we'll have an Allegri or an Allegri-esque sort of manager ready, available to take the reins? So, yeah, it is what it is. I personally, like Mike, like Alex, like all of us here, hope that the meeting goes well for Conte's sake, for the project's sake, for Inter's sake. But I also think that we'd be okay if Allegri steps in on what his Inter is going to look like. That's just I haven't even begun to think of that. I'm still in
You're still denial phase.
Yes, exactly.
Fair enough. Okay, so I wanted to move on to the part where I wanted us to name our favorite Inter player or for us the Inter player of the season, and for me it's the player that became the SempreInter player of the season, Romelu Lukaku, for everything that he's done, the season he had before at United, the way with which he was scorned and laughed upon. And the way that he has carried himself and what he's done at Inter, equaling Brazilian Ronaldo's record of 34 goals in a debut season, is to me simply stunning. He's missed one Champions League game. He's missed 2 league games in the Serie A. But other than that, he's played 51 games, only been booked twice. The man is a class act. On the pitch, off the pitch. So for me, it's just Romelu Lukaku. I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. Mo? Is that
no doubt. Nothing to add.
Will?
Yeah, it's an obvious choice. I thought it's so obvious that I did make a little podium just because I wanted to give honourable mentions to a couple of others who have clearly not been as effective as Lukaku, but deserve a mention anyway. So I've got Lukaku winning the gold medal, Barella with the silver, and Bastoni with a bronze. So those are the 3 that I think would deserve particular praise after the season that we've just seen, particularly Bastoni, because I didn't expect him to have 25 appearances in Serie A this season, but he's taken to it like a duck to water. So yeah, overall Lukaku, there's no doubt.
Mike?
# we love you, Rom.
Yeah. # we love you, Rom.
Simple as that, isn't it?
He's our player of the year. I will give a special mention. I thought Steven Zhang was pretty good this year too.
For sure.
I think he deserves. I mean, I would put him on my podium. I mean, Bastoni, like Will mentioned, like he was a pleasant surprise to see him come in and play right away and play pretty good. But I think overall, Steven Zhang was probably my second best player of the season. And I will say this, Nima, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to admit that I'm wrong, because a year ago we did our preview, and I did not see this coming. We've mentioned over the season, as he played, I admit that I was wrong, or I'd say 6 months ago. But now that the season's over, you probably even forget this, but we made a little wager that how many goals he would score, and he crushed that wager. I think it was like 23 or 24 goals.
Yeah,
he beat it like crazy.
I think I said above 25, and you said below, wasn't it?
Yeah, I said below. I didn't expect it to happen. He did it. He got it done, and he was our best player this year. He deserved it. And it's unfortunate the way the season ended on that final touch, the way it ended. But hey, he's gonna come back stronger. And on the wager that we made, I think the wager, whoever lost had to make a donation to a charity. If you don't mind, I would love to pick the charity, and I will make it in both of our names. So
go for it, Mike.
I'm going to do that, and I'll mention it to you whenever I do that.
Sounds great.
I'm proud. I'm proud of Lukaku, because I doubted him, and I'm glad he proved me wrong.
Nice one. Right. I wanted us to pick our favorite moment of the season as well. And for me, it has to be, it can be anything. It can be a goal. It can be a game. Something, this very broad definition. For me, it's the derby. It's the second half in the derby. 2-0 down, playing absolute rubbish, and then coming out there and just mopping the floor with Milan. Absolutely loved it. Didn't see it coming. Don't know what Conte did. God bless him for what he did. That was for me the moment of the season. That second half, from 2-1 to 2-2 to 3-2 to 4-2. What about you, Mo?
the iconic Lukaku shirt on the corner goal celebration under the curva. That for me is like the standout image of the season. This is probably it for me.
Will?
I have an alternative suggestion. I was going to go with the derby for, unfortunately, a lack of clear alternatives. But I then had a brainwave, and I think that my favourite image of the season was Sebastiano Esposito's moment with his mum against Genoa in December, because it was a beautiful image for a 17-year-old kid who was scoring his first goal at San Siro back when football stadiums with fans were a thing, and it just sort of, there's a lot of sadness and cynicism and disgusting things that go on in modern football. So that was a nice sort of pure moment, and also it was all because of Lukaku, because he gave him the penalty, and again, tying it back into our Player of the Season award, he has been a class act throughout, and that was just one of those moments. So I did also have a goal though, and I wanted to mention this because this was probably if we're talking about an on-pitch moment, in terms of footballing reasons, my favourite moment was Barella's goal against Verona.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Really
I was choosing between those.
Because that was a really tough game. Everything seemed to be going wrong. We were missing chances. There was 10 minutes left, and he produced this piece of Stankovic-esque magic that took the roof off San Siro, and it was a lovely moment for. Not just for the moment itself, but because you were kind of seeing in your head, you're projecting forward and thinking that we could have these moments over and over again. Although, having said that, I just checked, it was his only league goal of the season, which is quite strange when you think he can have a goal like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we're going to see more of it. I think this guy is Stankovic air. The more I see of him, he's definitely more Stankovic air. What about you, Mike? What's your moment of the season?
Well, the best match for me would be the derby against Milan coming back. That's the best match by far. The best moment, I actually thought about this too. I mean, I was hoping no one was going to say it, but then Will obviously stole my thunder. But yeah, that was my favorite moment when Lukaku gave him the penalty of the entire year. It made me feel good about myself. I mean, it made me feel great. I felt emotional. I felt and a lot of great talk about everybody from Lukaku. Afterwards, I really loved that moment. That was the best moment. I feel that being at the match against Slavia Prague, when Barella scored the equalizer in the 92nd minute, that's probably the moment I will remember from the entire year, because I was there. I was right behind the goal, and even though they didn't win the match, it was cool to be there when Barella scored that equalizer. And even though it was a crap match for us, it was still a great moment to have that happen right in front of me. So I was very happy about that moment, being there to experience it.
Cool.
Funnily enough, I was considering the away game against Slavia Prague, because that was another really frustrating match where you'd had goals disallowed and a goal that had been turned into a penalty at the other end with a VAR check, and it looked as if everything was going wrong, and then Lukaku and Lautaro just went mad in the last 10 minutes, and everyone was screaming, and it was the moment we thought we were going to go through. So that was actually one of my favourite wins of the season. But yeah, it's if you've been at the stadium, then
fair enough.
Right.
Let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football, starting with the comical side of things, the Frog of the Week, which will be presented by Mr. William Beckman.
Clamoroso autogol di Ranocchia.
Yes, it will. I picked on a super club last week with Barcelona. I'm going to do the same again this week. The Frog of the Week, I'm giving it to Paris Saint-Germain. They have a very strange, almost tragic comic history with the Champions League over the last few years. Always, they seem to have this ability to create a new, even more ridiculous and stupid way of getting knocked out compared to the one that they came up with the year before. And while this year's this year's defeat in the final wasn't funny in that sense, I did find it rather amusing that they still somehow found a way to get a custard pie in the face, because having spent €1 billion to build this squad to win the Champions League over the course of 7 or 8 years, the one time they make the final, they lose because of a goal from their former academy player, Kingsley Coman.
It is.
So
it is funny. It is froggish, isn't it?
Them's the breaks. And sorry, I don't know if you can take any sort of wider ranging conclusion from it, but it was quite funny. And PSG don't deserve good things. We don't want Qatar-backed football clubs to come and win the Champions League. That should be sort of illegal by UEFA law. So thank you, Coman. And PSG are the final frog of the season. Not least because our good friend didn't even get on when they were chasing a goal and was cutting a very
that was to me
long figure.
For me, it was Icardi for the fact
that he was bounced by Choupo-Moting in a Champions League final.
A guy from Stoke, a guy who could barely make it at Stoke, was preferred instead of Mauro Icardi in the Champions League.
Did you see the image of the Icardi heat map?
Yes, I did.
It was just him walking around the bench. Oh, it was
great. Brilliant.
Absolutely. Just amazing that we're recording this on the 24th of August, and this time last year, we were reading stories that Inter were going to have to bring him onto the subs bench for the opening game of the season against Lecce, so that he wouldn't pursue legal action because he didn't want to leave the club, and because it was just another era. So
it's a bizarre.
Thank goodness that a year on, at least that problem is gone.
Oh, for sure. Let's move on to something much more positive. This week's Moratti, which is presented by Mr. Mohamed Nassar.
He works a lot. He's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of this qualities.
Yeah, you really teed it up for me right there, Will. I don't know why, but this end of season stint has got me feeling very, emotional with my Morattis. And this week's Moratti is this season. And you like the contrast you just made right now with where we were 12-ish months ago and where we are today. The desire, the ambition, the cohesion, the unity in this team. I know things are less than ideal on a managerial level, but even then we're miles ahead of where we were. Highest points ranked in a decade, first European final in a decade, the first final in 9 years. It really is. It's been a really wonderful season. I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and it really feels like it's the beginning of something good with Conte. Hopefully, without him, with Allegri instead, I think Suning have to be really thanked for really turning this mess around, and we can finally, hopefully, in the coming season, bear the fruits of the hard labor that everyone's put into the club. So yeah, this season's my Moratti of the week.
Nice one there, Mo. For sure. This for me, I can't agree with you more. If we compare how things were last season and the way we started with the infighting and people suing and faking knee injuries and stuff like that, and then you compare it to this season, it really is quite the contrast. Right, let's move on to something much more negative. This week's Moggi, which I'll be presenting myself. Well, we're not really sure what's going on yet, but this whole situation is absolutely absurd. The captain of Manchester United decided to go on a lad's holiday with his sister in Mykonos, in the Greek island of Mykonos, during Harry Maguire decided to go there, and apparently, according to several British media, he was arrested by Greek police after he got into a fight with and I quote, gangster-style Albanian businessman who stabbed his sister in the arm with a sharp metal straw. Now, I don't know what a sharp metal straw is. I'm guessing it's what they were drinking through. But the whole situation is just so just so ridiculous. And there's video of it out as well. And what makes this whole situation even more absurd is the fact that his fellow central defender, Victor Lindelöf Nilsson, meanwhile, while he was fighting in drunken brawls in Mykonos, Victor Lindelöf stopped a thief from robbing the handbag of a 90-year-old woman in Västerås, where he's holidaying. I mean, the contrast between these two just I found it rather. One is
tale of two centre backs.
Yes, really, tale of two centre backs. Yeah, it is quite bizarre, and that whole situation is ridiculous. So for me, that the whole Maguire gate, Maguire gate is my Moggi of the week.
Did you hear that he was? Sorry, did you hear he was also accused of trying to bribe the police when they got into the altercation to try and prevent the charges from being pressed against him when they were fighting. There's a lot of details in the Daily Mail today about the amount of money that he splurged on alcohol that night. £4.50 on a doner kebab, but then also sort of he had like a 20,000 bottle of something and a. I can't remember the details right now. I was actually considering it for my frog, so I'm glad I didn't give it. But there was like £77,000 of alcohol that he drank, or he purchased anyway in this night out. Yeah, thank you, Romelu and Alexis and Ashley. You've got away from that, so congratulations.
Exactly. For sure, and Victor Nilsson Lindelöf has to be a little bit of a Moratti of the week as well for preventing a thief from stealing the handbag of a 90-year-old woman. Right, that's all we had time for this season. We're going to take a little miniature break here, a little mini break here, because
have a coffee break, and in 10 minutes we'll be back with the new season.
Pretty much, because. Well, to be honest, I mean, the season starts. Well, it's supposed to start anyway on September 19th. Anyway, and we'll be back. We'll be back after that, after the season starts, and we'll be doing this show. We'll be doing the show every week as per usual. But I'd like to thank all our guests that have been on this season. No one mentioned, no one forgotten. Everyone who's been on this, from the panelists to the guests, to you guys, Mo, Mike, the other Mike, Alex, Fulvio, you will, thank you so much for this. And above all, to every single one of you listening and liking and subscribing and rating us and giving us all this love in the comments on YouTube and in other platforms. It's thanks to you that we've never, we've never been this downloaded and this popular ever before. So thank you so much for sticking through us through a very bizarre season. So I'd like to thank you, Mo.
Dai ragazzi, thank you for having me.
And you, Mr. Gallo.
I guess it's going to be a short summer. it's pretty much almost there. So yeah, we'll be talking, and hopefully this Conte thing gets settled in the next couple of days.
For sure, and it will be. Mr. William Beckman.
Thank you, everyone. We've made it. I feel like I should have prepared a speech, but I haven't.
No,
so
that's fine.
Thank you, and I hope you will come back next year to listen to us incorrectly predicting things. And
except for Mo, he got the
apart from Mo, he's won the predictions league. Yeah. I did think that how some people they do like this time capture thing where you put something in a piece of paper and then you bury it and then you. I thought we could do that with our start of season predictions.
Yeah, we will do next.
But
next season.
I was going to go back and find out what we all said for the top six and laugh about it. But I couldn't be bothered. So go back and listen to the first episode of the season.
No, I'm gonna do that. Next time we do it, I'm gonna write everything down. I'm gonna write everything down in a document and then I'm gonna read it up to everyone.
No, you got to bury it though, Nima. That's part of the process.
Yeah. Okay. The ground. You know what? I'll email it to our producer Renato Brea, who'll have to hang on to it, and he'll send it to me when it's back on. And
anyway,
also,
thank you for this season. So I look forward to joining you in 15 minutes time for match day one.
But also a big shout out to our producer Renato Brea for always getting this stuff out as soon as he does, and doing all the intros and outros and all the jingles and everything. Thank you, everyone. Until next episode, until next season, I'm your host, Nima Tavallaey, wishing you health, love, good break, relaxing times, no more drama at Inter, but always sempre e solo Forza Inter. Forza Inter!